Hey all, this is a talk on using data classes to help self-document external APIs. How many times have you come across code like this? This is a POST request to an API that accepts parameters like title, body and user ID for creating a blog post. It then returns a response which contains data about the created blog post. We construct a request data dictionary with relevant parameters and return a dictionary with the JSON response. So what are the issues here? The supported request parameters are unknown. In this example we are sending title, body and user ID to this service, but how can we be sure that these are the only arguments that the API can accept? The parameter types are also unknown. How do we know what types we are supposed to send to this API? While in most cases we can infer this, it is still nice to be explicit. As well as that, the response is unknown. In this snippet we have absolutely no idea what data has been returned by the API and therefore the function as well. All we know is that it returns a dictionary. So, why do we care about this? Because we have no way of knowing what the response contains, when somebody comes to this code in the future there is a large barrier of entry before they can work with it. They would have to either test the API or hope that other references to this function provide clarity. We may also find it hard to get the documentation again. Maybe the documentation requires credentials to access and nobody can remember them. Or maybe you're using an older version which has had the documentation removed. Whatever the case, a delay accessing the documentation equals a delay on working with the API. What am I proposing to help deal with these issues? As you may have guessed, it's to replace the usage of dictionaries with data classes to explicitly define our requests and responses. In this example, we can now see that the request data for this API accepts title, body, user ID, and we can send it author if we want to. We also know exactly what type each parameter should be. Any future programmer can see this and understand how to construct the request for this API without needing to find the documentation. We have also defined what the response should look like and what values will be available, which again helps any future programmer to know exactly what will be returned if they call this function without needing to refer to the documentation. There are also some side benefits to this approach. Constructing request and response objects for unit tests is now simpler. Most IDEs will also offer autocomplete when using request and response objects now, and you can use type checkers to help ensure that code that uses the request and response objects are bug-free, whether through static analysis with something similar to MyPy or runtime analysis with something like Pydantic, or both. But what about docstrings? Some of you may have seen the first example and cried out in horror at the lack of a docstring which would have been the appropriate response. The first example could have had a docstring similar to this which provides the missing API data as well. I would still recommend using data classes for the extra self-documentation they provide plus the side benefits previously listed. Thanks for listening. I hope you'll agree that the usage of data classes helps keep your code easier to understand for any future developers. The code shown here is available at this GitHub URL and I'll post these slides in the Slack. Thanks again.